All right, so good evening, viewers. Thank you very much for being part of this evening. And thanks to Casapreco Alomo Beaters, the show is brought to you live from the studio. It's the Men's Lounge every Thursday, 9 p.m. Obviously, when the time is up, you know what to expect. So last week, we brought, you saw the two macho men, one beside me and one on the phone. And I promised you I was going to come back looking bigger. I'm sure you've seen my muscles coming up. So we learned a lot about how the muscles contrast and the biceps and all the ceps. And then most especially, we spoke about the supplements that people take, and the negatives and the positives. And all that matters is take the supplement in the right quantities for the right purpose. This evening, we have another interesting discussion that we are going to bring your way. I'm going to urge all of you to be part of this show on all our social media platforms. That is at eTVGhana. So Facebook, Instagram, and all others at eTVGhana. And again, I need you to start sending us your text messages from now on our WhatsApp line, which is 020-2222-054. I repeat, 020-2222-054. I'm going to go on our very first break, and when we are back, we shoot straight to the discussions. Please stay tuned. All right, so welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's the Men's Lounge on eTV Ghana. When I did the introduction, I did tell you that we're going to have a very interesting topic. Now, before I introduce the topic, I have something that's coming fresh. It's a new TV program, more like a telenovela that's going to come on eTV very soon. Let me tell you something about it. So it's called eTVGhana. eTVGhana. I hear the ladies know how to pronounce these words. I'm sure it's because of the Korean series that they've been watching. However, an award-winning Indian telenovela is coming soon on eTVGhana, focusing on two childhood friends. So these childhood friends are Shan and Puchi, who grow apart and meet as adults. So, they grew up childhood friends, and then they went apart, and then they meet again as adults. And when Shan falls in love with a lady called Asmita, he realizes that it is actually his childhood friend, Puki. Shan is married to Nandini, and Asmita is engaged to someone else. What will happen next? It's coming soon on eTV Ghana. So today, we go straight to today's topic. We're going to be discussing paternity fraud. And I'm sure when I mention paternity fraud, it rings some kind of bell. There's been several issues in the news before, several countries. There are some repercussions even that I know some countries have been able to put together for these things. However, today we'll be discussing that, and especially coping with the emotional pain of knowing that the child you thought was yours isn't yours. That pain, I haven't experienced it yet, but, well, we have somebody who is well-to-do to discuss this with us, and he happens to be a doctor. I think I'll give him the opportunity to introduce himself. He's a face that you know, but I guess it comes up as a surprise when he does the introduction himself. Boss, Doc.
Hi.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Isaac Munarata. I'm a medical doctor and clinical health psychologist. So we deal with a lot of psychological issues.
This must be one of the psychological issues.
I think this is an important one.
Yeah.
It's an important topic. I think that generally when these issues come up, we look at some aspects of it and we neglect the mental health aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's why this topic is important, because after all the things settle, people would have to deal with the impact of whatever went on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's
Doc,
critical.
The past few weeks, months has been full of COVID. And just 1 minute, I want to know your take on COVID, what we should be doing. For me, I always believe that you, from the professional background, always know more, and we always enjoy listening to you, and especially the fact also that eTV Global Media Alliance, the whole group, is observing the health month, and so we find it necessary that we bring doctors, health personnel to tell us exactly what we should know. Doc.
Well, since it's men, I would want to also drift a bit.
It's okay, Seth. Because you know what? People are saying that the men are dying more. So let's protect ourselves.
So there are more men dying,
yeah.
you know, for various reasons. There are more men dying. Even in Ghana, I realize that there are more men who have the infection than women, and there are more men dying. Right? There may be some factors I quickly want to mention. Right? There are all kinds of research going on currently about why men are dying, but some of them come on top of my head. Let me mention one. Men are likely not to follow precautionary measures. Women are likely to do that, you know, because generally we would dismiss a lot of things. So you hardly find a man dying and a woman dying from road traffic accident like she was in charge and there was an accident, because they are likely to follow all the rules, right? Men are likely not to, right? Then also realize that if you look at the health status of men may come with all kinds of chronic illnesses, which may be higher in terms of than women, right? So they are likely to suffer from a lot of things relating to COVID-related issues. Then also what I would add has to do with the fact that generally, if you look at most of the people who are likely to get out and go and fight and do stuff, it is likely going to be the man. So their risk of exposure also goes up. Because at this point, when maybe you have to go and buy something in town, it's likely the man would opt to go and not the woman. You know, so men are likely to protect their families around this time by taking the risks to do a lot of things. So it's generally around that, but there are all kinds of research findings going on around this. And so we are going to know exactly why the men are dying. So I would generally say that COVID-19 has come, is likely to stay longer than normal because healthy people are the ones who are carrying it around. You know, when you consider others like Ebola, you know, you are almost dying. So it is not likely that you are going to step out, you know, out of that area and go to town, right? But this one, realize that healthy people are the ones who are carrying it around, and they are likely the ones who are going to transmit to people and all that. So it's likely it's going to stay with us for a long time. So we want to encourage people to continue what we've started, all the precautionary measures. We should continue it and not stop. You know, a certain persistence and continuity of a certain intervention is likely to help, you know, deal with the situation better. Then secondly, I also say that, you know, the mental health aspect of this season, I think is even more than the physical aspect of this season. Right, because of all the anxieties, the stresses, and all the things, depression, boredom, guilt, anger, you know, post-traumatic issues, obsessive, compulsive symptoms, and all that. There are a lot of mental health aspects of this season. But, you know, when there's any pandemic or an outbreak of any disease, we are likely to focus more on the pathogen and what it's doing in the population and how to prevent the spread than the impact in terms of the mental health, because all over the world, issues concerning mental health is not, you know, that, you know. So I think that the government is doing well by trying to engage Ghana Psychological Association and Ghana Psychological Council on some level. We need to continue that and also expand it to everybody in this season. So that's what I'd want to add.
Nice one, Doctor. On that note, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I mean, like I said earlier, it's important that we share our thoughts on these things, concerning also the fact that it's a health month for eTVGhana, Happy FM, and other partners. And so we find it very important that each and every time we try to remind you of the precautionary measures and the protocols that we need to observe. For us, I always say, look, just wash your hands and use the sanitizer, and then stay away. Stay home. I think that's just stay at home, so that you don't have to, you know, go through all that doctor is saying. The men, please, we are more prone to this, and it's because we are likely to be out there, you know, trying to fend for the family. Please, let's be cautious. It's very important. Doc, so today we are talking paternity fraud.
Yes.
Paternity fraud. I know there are so many issues when it comes to paternity fraud. I tried defining it myself, and I thought, well, I said to myself that I think paternity fraud is a deliberate, you know, something that happens with the women so much that the men don't get to know anyway. How would you define paternity fraud?
Well, so simply, when a man assumes a certain fatherhood over a certain child, right, because he thinks that child is his biological child. So being a father over a child doesn't mean you are the biological child. Biological father means that you are the one whose sperm fertilized the egg, right? And so it is through your actions that the child was conceived. and you may share some genetic, some genes with the child, right? So that's the difference. So there are people who are biological fathers, and there are people who assume a certain fatherhood role, and this definition is what is creating a lot of confusion. That okay, if someone assumes fatherhood and takes care of that child, then that person is the father.
Don't you agree with that?
On some level, you would agree. On some level, you agree. But if you look at all the problems that comes, out of that kind of situation, then you realize that because of that disjoint, that is where all the problems come from. Because, the problem is in two ways, right? Two things. The representation of children for different societies. Then also, when it comes to infidelity. Okay. These are two things. So people become concerned for two reasons. Infidelity issues. Then also the representation of that child. Because every child, especially in this environment, represents something. Okay. And depending on that representation, then we assign a certain level of importance to that child. So for example, a first child, if that child is in a certain family, that first child, is seen in a certain light, is treated in a certain way, especially if that child is from a royal home or some home that assumes a certain kind of responsibility in a certain community. And every child also represents a generation. So if I have a child, I want that child to continue my legacy, my generation, right? And so a child represents a generation. A child also represents an inheritance, right? Because whatever the child, would become or would assume represents a certain kind of inheritance that came out of a certain effort. Yeah. Right? So if you're a father and you have this child in your life, that child represents something. You want to hand over something, a certain concept, a certain property, a certain asset, a certain, yourself. You want to leave yourself behind. And so that is why it becomes important. Then the next has to do with infidelity, right? And that is why a lot of women, when I gave that definition, I didn't talk about whether it is right or wrong.
Well, I didn't ask for that.
You didn't ask for that. but I think you made a statement at the beginning.
Whether you agree.
You made a statement at the beginning, because if you look at all the reasons why it happens, then you realize that it goes beyond right or wrong. Yeah. Right? And I think at some point we're going to talk about it. So infidelity and its issues in a certain environment also, makes this an issue. If it was just, okay, it's just, a child came into being, right? And there was no issue with infidelity, or the child doesn't represent anything, or there was no importance relating to children, then this won't become an issue. But immediately paternity fraud comes up, then, these issues would have to come up.
Yes. I get that. And so how often do you see people in situations like that? I mean, from where you sit, do people come to you often?
In this part of the world, right, we can talk about, I think that there was this this article that came up sometime, I forgot, I think sometime this year or last year, talked about the fact that the issue generally in Ghana has increased because of, now we are talking about it. So a lot of people, I think they even cited an example at Kumasi. I think Dofsu also gave a certain report about Kumasi, about the fact that, there are a lot of these cases.
I think the Ashanti region had, the highest amount of these cases.
And now in Ghana, you have, I think you have some facilities around that can easily do DNA tests. You see, if you can't do a DNA test, you can't complain. But when you can have a proof, then you can complain. So generally in Ghana, I think that because of, maybe it was there, but people were not reporting it. Or there were no means to be able to find out. So people were not talking about it. So maybe the numbers are going up now, not because it wasn't there. Yeah. I'm sure by now, whilst you're talking, some 65-year-old man is really thinking about a certain child somewhere who he's suspecting, but they didn't take action then. But I think it may be there, but now I think it's increasing. Yes.
But then, talking about the paternity fraud, sometimes I want to ask that, what really would cause that? What are the things that would lead to paternity fraud?
I'm smiling because, the term fraud makes it negative. Just by hearing the name, it makes it very wrong. But if you look at some of the factors, some of the things that can be at play at that time, you realize that for some, it may not be the fault of the woman, right? It was something that happened that she may not have control. I'm going to give examples. So I want to quickly mention some of the things that can lead to that.
Okay.
One, fear. There are a lot of women who do that because they are afraid to lose a certain relationship and the benefits that come from it. That is the first one. They are afraid. So let me just give it to this person, because if I don't, I will lose this relationship that I cherish. So, for example, something happened. He had, a one-night stand or something with someone, right? And she became pregnant, and she knows she became pregnant, but she is in this kind of relationship with this person and doesn't want to lose that person. So the fear of losing that person, then they would have to do something to cover up. That is the first thing. The second has to do with the fact that some people do not disclose at the beginning because they actually do not know. Because at that point, they were in a certain relationship with two people. And so they don't know.
Even when they were married?
So
we'll go there.
So when you say paternity fraud, it has nothing to do with marriage.
I get that.
So they have a certain kind of relationship which may lead to marriage or whatever, but a child came in. Right? But around that time, they may have been involved with maybe multiple people. So they actually don't know. But they put it on this person because they actually like this person for various reasons. So now that becomes the person's responsibility. The second is that, in every society, depending on how they see women in relation to infidelity, it influences the behaviors of women. So in this environment, where if a man is unfaithful, it is cool. But if a woman is not faithful, it is really wrong. Then that, pushes a lot of women to assume certain behaviors when these things happen. So if it was cool, they may decide to disclose without the feeling of shame. I won't use the word stigma, but the feeling of shame and everything that comes around it. So some women may do that. Another thing too is that some women do that to escape from some form of abuse, right? Because they are not sure what the other person may do. But based on some abusive, experiences in the past, they know that if I disclose that this is not your child, something may come up. So they would. So in order to protect themselves from that kind of abuse, it's like they didn't want to lie about it, but the fear that I will be abused and go into this situation, they may cover up.
I'd rather keep quiet.
Keep quiet. Another reason is that everything I'm telling you is research, all kinds of research around it, know. Another reason may also be that there are some women who do not disclose because maybe they were raped by a certain relative or someone.
Okay.
So after that rape, they realized they were pregnant, but they were in a certain relationship. But in some environment, when you say you are raped, it doesn't make sense. So why did you even go into his room? What happened? That kind of thing. So a lot of women may have to cover up to save themselves and the baby, and the pain of the fact that this child won't have a certain father. And that experience may remind them all the time about that experience, especially if it's from a certain relative. There are all kinds of research done over the world about some of these things. Then another thing too is that there are some women who would just want to manipulate someone because of the benefits, right? So they just want to put it on you because, when I put it on you, the benefits around it. So they know it, that you are not the father, but I'll put it on you, right? Then the final thing I would add is that, there are some people to whom maybe, for example, they were in this sexual relation with someone, and the person was consistent in terms of sexual, so they've been having multiple sexual relations with that person. So it's like every time there's some sexual relationship, and that relationship has gone on for a long time. Then someone comes in, right, and sleeps with them one, and they become pregnant. Then they would have to wait. This person is just one, and I'm pregnant. This person is multiple times. So it's like he's taking a lot from me. He slept with me so many times, taking a lot from me. So I'll lose a lot, if I let him go. So they will put it on you.
Wow, these are very interesting revelations. When you were speaking, there was a point that you said that, so some of the women, look, just don't even know. So that does it defeat what our people say all the time, that the woman always knows the right father?
Well, they may suspect, but depending on the situation around, they may not know. Really? If, for example, in this month, You've had multiple sexual relationship with some people. There are some who may have even around the same week. Maybe, for example, they were in this relationship with this guy, right? They slept with that guy, but they're having challenges. Then they sought comfort in another guy's arms. They didn't plan on sleeping with the person, but it happened.
Yeah.
Around the same week, right? But they came back together with that person. And so it comes up, I'm pregnant. They are thinking, who is who? But they are likely to put it on the person who may be responsible. And women, and a lot of men think about the child and what may even happen to this child if I give it to this kind of man. So they may say, this guy is responsible. He will take care of this child.
Yeah.
So if it was just them alone, they may not bother much. But the fact that something has come out of it and they find this man responsible, they may put it on that man and that. So that is why now, even in the law courts, there's a lot of things around, paternity fraud and the way forward. So they are likely to take a decision that would go in favor of the child and not even the two of them.
The two, okay.
Because they are thinking about, okay, this person has been the father over this child for a long time.
Yeah.
That is all that this child knows. So what will be the best way forward for this child? There are a lot of law courts who will take the decision based on, as in because of the child and not even think about the parents involved. Right?
Interesting.
So that word fraud, right, without going into what happened and why it happened, you may be able to judge it wrongly, right? So every case may be different, right? Regardless of what every case would have to be taken as in this case and this case and be able to make a certain judgment.
Wow. So I'm going to ask you to start joining us even from now. The WhatsApp line is open. It's 0202222054. Today we are likely to open the phone lines also quite early so that you can push in all your questions to Doc. I'm sure he has a lot to offer. At some point also in the conversation, we'll call a resource person in the name of Mr. Ebo JB, and he will also share quite a number of things with us. So in the past, there have been so many instances that I'm sure you are aware of, with especially, with sportsmen. I'll specifically go straight to footballers. And I've been wondering, could it be the reason that they are not always home with the families and they don't have time for the families? That is why some of these things, come their way.
Marriage is a very, very challenging journey, right? That is why if you're not ready, you don't go into marriage, because marriage is commitment. Marriage is responsibility. Marriage is your life. The moment you marry, everything else changes. You can't do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Even your bed, you have to share with someone. And when the kids walk in, they take over, right? So marriage is different, right, from the normal way of doing things. That is why someone can manage a business but fail in marriage. Someone can manage, churches, but may struggle to manage another person, because marriage is very challenging, right? So, coming back to your question, I realize that anybody who doesn't have time for their home or the details of their home is dysfunctional, where the other person cannot be fulfilled, cannot be appreciated, cannot make a certain progress, achieve their own goals and dreams, right? Their needs and expectations are dashed. They cannot have a certain relationship with the person they want to live forever with. If that home is dysfunctional, right, everything else will fall apart. Everything else will fall apart. And usually people do not plan, in quotes, to be unfaithful. Unfaithfulness does not happen overnight, but it may not also be according to a certain plan. It can develop over time without the person, actually planning it. So someone may just fall into the hands of someone, right, in a certain season where there's some difficulty, before they realize something happens.
Thinking you have a shoulder to lean on.
No, something happens. And sexual stuff are powerful. It's brought a lot of people down. When David was on top of his roof and Charlie was taking the cool and saw this woman, and that was it.
Oh, he said it's wow.
No, he couldn't even think straight again, right? So people would have to realize that marriage is challenging.
Yeah.
And anything that is dysfunctional at home can fuel certain things that people will regret about later on.
Yeah.
Right. That is why anytime you're talking about these things, you just don't scratch the surface and say there's a child involved. And because a child came, this and that, you have to pay attention to the details, and be able to help out to deal with why did this happen, and what is the way for it, how do we that can put to rest a lot of things that come up, around these issues.
So Doc, oftentimes, how do the men find out?
Well, every man who pays attention may suspect something, right? And if, for example, you've been having some sexual relation with some people, someone, and something like that come up, you always question it when you're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
There's some question, right? So at the beginning, they may suspect that, no, it is likely not my child. But because the woman says it's your child, you tend to believe it. And because no evidence of something else happening with anybody else, you may accept it. But as time goes on, you realize that the child may not have your traits. Your physical structure, everything. Maybe you are fair, but your child is dark. Or the hair texture, something about the child doesn't really feel right, that is your child.
Yeah.
Especially if they have other kids, and this child is the odd one out. You have some features of the mother, but there is nothing about that child that really, then they begin to suspect. Then also, depending on whether you were often around that time, where the woman became pregnant, then that becomes also a certain kind of concern. But if the child looks like the mother, right, it may be very difficult to know until something really comes up later. And usually it is conflicts in future that brings out those things.
Yeah.
When there's some conflict between you and the
could even
and
be
the woman.
Accidents sometimes.
Yes, it can be accidental.
Needed for
something, maybe some lab test or something,
yeah.
and realize that it is totally off. For example, maybe you are AA, your wife is also AA, sickling. AA, your wife is also AA, but they check the child and the child is AS. So accidental, something will come up. Maybe some crisis or some conflict will come, and the woman will make a certain statement and will draw your mind. Something always comes up, right? But there are some men who will never know till they die, right? Others too, something will come up. And I'm sure whilst we are talking, some men are thinking, right, on this child, trying to do the calculations and see.
Please, you need to put out a disclaimer. We didn't mean to bring up issues, but I think it's something worth discussing, Doc, and we really appreciate your facts and everything on this one. So we are talking paternity fraud. I'm sure if you've been part of this, you've been hearing a lot. We're going to take our second break, and then we'll be back for more. Please stay tuned. So welcome back if you're just joining us. It's the Men's Lounge on eTVGhana. We are discussing paternity fraud, the issues that it comes with and all that. And we have Dr. Arthur here. Today we are not talking COVID, we are talking paternity fraud. And so we need to relate. Doc, we are back. So one of the things that's been pricking my mind has to do with how should a man handle the situation, because I want to believe that psychologically it has a great impact on a man. So how should a man handle this?
Yeah, so depending on the situation and what the content of the relationship is, the approach will be different. So anybody who is really satisfied with their marriage, they will want to work things out. And anybody who is very satisfied about the child they have, they will want to work things out. There are people who say that, okay, it's past, it's gone, so let's forget about it and let's move on.
Yeah.
Right. So depending on the situation that is around, the family issues, then things will be different. And also how precious the child is. If that child has grown very well and is an important person in the society, I'm sure you're able to ignore a lot of things, just to be able to move on, right? And so some of the effects that it can bring on the man, right? One is pain.
Okay.
Depending on their investment. For example, if by accepting that responsibility at the beginning, it dealt with them and destroyed a lot of things around them, it will be very painful. So I wasn't responsible, but when you told me I was responsible, everything around me shuts down. My family members abandoned me. My work, got destroyed. I had to work, overtime to be able to take care of this child, So if the man went through a lot of pain when he accepted that responsibility, changed his plan, maybe he was supposed to travel, he couldn't travel because of this child. So at the beginning, whatever happened, and even the details of the relationship, even in some part of the world, US and the rest, you have to pay some amount of money for child care and all that.
Yeah.
So if that man went through a lot of difficulties to take care of that child, then it will be very painful. But any man who was really satisfied with everything and it may not be that painful. The next is trust. There will be some loss of trust, regardless of what happened around the marriage.
Yeah.
Now, okay, what else are you hiding from me?
Tell me more.
Right. So trust is going to go down. Then also anxieties about the future. What would happen next? Even anxieties about if they decide not to even marry again, right? Anxieties about trusting another person, another relationship. Would it happen like it happened, in the past? Then if you're not able to cope with all that, they may go into some depression, right? Especially if the impact of this situation is really, really, really severe on the man. They may go into some form of depression. Then also I would talk about the perception of the man will be challenged about themselves. They may have to question their own, ability to do things. For example, if that child now was the only child, and for some reason no child came out again, now you have to question the man and his ability, and now especially in this part of the world where the power of the man and the manliness of a man is reduced down there, to details down there, right? Everything about the man will be shaken. His perception about himself, right? And the fact that someone has deceived me all this while, they may ask themselves, where did I go wrong? Or what didn't I do right? So their perception about themselves will be affected. Their perception about the world around them. They may see women as some way.
I agree.
They may see all women as people who cannot be trusted.
Yeah.
But women can be trusted. It depends on who is in question, right? So that kind of generalization and that kind of mindset can make them become very hostile towards women.
Yeah.
There are some men who become very, very hostile towards women because of some terrible experience they've had with a certain woman. Right? It goes also with the women. Some women have a certain negative perception about men just because they've met about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men who are a certain way. So it will challenge them. Then also their perception about the future and how to relate with people, right? Future goals and aspiration. For example, if I plan all my life around this child and now this child is not my child, how do I do it? All the plans I had for this child, what do I do? All the plans about the properties and all the assets and the continuity of the business that I've built over the years and all that, do I hand it over to this child? So everything about the man actually is going to be challenged.
Yeah.
And if this man does not receive the right help, it's going to really affect the man. So when people come like that, you may have to put their situation in context. Right? I know there are all kinds of legal situations around that. If legal stuff can be sorted out, fine. But in terms of moving on, there may be 3 ways. You either help them solve the problem so that they live together and fix it, or you help them solve all the issues around it, but they will not live together. They part ways. Then the third you may have to do is to help the woman, the child, and the man to be able to deal with all the impact that this thing is having on them. Because there may be a certain woman who genuinely loves and cares about the man, wants to live and do everything for the man, but something happened and this thing came up. So the impact of this will not just be on the man, but on the woman. So when people come to see us, our goal is not to find out whether it's right or wrong, but our goal is to be able to help them deal with the situation, cope with the situation, and make the necessary adjustments so that the child can move on, the woman can move on, and also the man can move on. Because we are not there to put any judgment. The judgment is with the law courts, right? But we are there to be able to help them deal with the impact of the situation and also whatever is happening around them to see whether they can move on or not, right? So the man, for example, would have to reevaluate all his thinking and stuff about the situation, right? And see it in a positive light. In a way, it may be very, very painful, but how people think influences how they feel, and how they feel influences how they behave. So their thinking, their feelings, and their behavior, right? And that is what mental health is, right? Someone may ask, so why is the psychologist there? You know, are we going crazy? You know, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
mental health is simple. A person's thinking, feelings, and behavior, right? How they think, how they feel, and how they behave. Anything that is causing distress, dysfunction, you know, damage to everything around you, and also deviation from social norms, we say you are mentally unwell, right? So this is a mental health issue. So what we do is to help them cope with the situation by helping them re-evaluate the whole situation. Okay, it was wrong, but how do we move on from there? What are the positive things about this kind of situation that we can focus on in order to make a certain progress? So we may have to help them reevaluate all their thinking about it, right? So that they can be able to accept the situation the way it is and rather focus on the solutions and not the problems, right? That kind of positive way of evaluating everything can help them move on, even regardless of what has come up. Then the second thing is that we need to be able to help them, you know, accept, you know, the child for who the child is.
Yes, yeah.
And the kind of situation that could have evolved anyway. What if that child was adopted, right? What happens, right? We should be able to see that, okay, regardless of what it is, there's a child that is involved, right? And we can be able to, you know, focus on this child and also solve our issues without, you know, the excesses that can come out of this, right? So we may also have to help them evaluate their perception and stuff about this child so that they can have a certain positive, you know, emotional responses and behavior towards this child. Then also we may have to help them deal with all the legal issues around it.
Yeah.
Because those who still want to go the legal way, it's a daunting process, right? In some places, they may have to tell the woman to refund all the things they've invested in that child, right? But in some situations, it may not work, right? And if how would they refund? It may be very, very difficult, right?
Yeah.
Then also, you know, now the perception is that the father of the child is not the person who donated the sperms, but the father of the child is the person who was responsible enough to help that child become better in this life.
Yeah.
That kind of mindset saves a lot of problems, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, everybody needs a father, right? If you look at even the US and the stats, more than 70% of the women, single, you know, motherhood rate is about 70%.
Of course.
Right? And that is why there are a lot of problems. Father absence is one of the biggest issues when it comes to children and behaviors and the future of children. Right? So if someone, for some reason, had to assume fatherhood, then that reason should be enough, the fact that I was able to help this child get somewhere, right? Then also, if there are any kind of relationship issues and specific issues in the home, right, we may have to look at those specific issues and be able to help them. But anybody who is going through that, you know, it is a health issue, right? All the psychology around it is a health issue. And because of that, they may have to seek some professional care, you know, in a certain professional facility. And in any time of crisis, you may need someone who is a professional to be able to help you deal with all the issues around it.
Okay, Doc. I guess that's the reason why your profession becomes very, very important in this. So let's take some messages that are coming from our console over here, and this is coming from Edward from UCC. So would it be fair to divorce your wife after you encounter a situation like that, or should you stay with your wife even after you've lost total trust in her because of the for better, for worse vow you made to each other? This is coming from Edward. Another one is coming from, okay, so this one says, Dr. Newman, can we talk? The name didn't come. This is coming from Sami. Good evening, boss. You are doing great work, and your guest is on top. God bless you. Thank you, Sami. So the question that came, should Edward divorce the wife?
Well, you know, that decision can be dealt with depending on the situation. As much as possible, if people can avoid divorce, it would help because of all the things involved, right? But if they are very satisfied with that situation, right, then would advise against divorce. But everybody would have to look at the unique situation and be able to make that judgment.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And if someone is watching me and the person is a Christian, then the Bible comes in about the fact that does the Bible support divorce and all that. The Bible gives conditions for divorce in there, especially when it comes to infidelity. But even with infidelity, God gives people grace to be able to accept the situation and be able to move on. Right? And all the things you're talking about, you know, sometimes when you pray about these things, it is God who gives you a certain peace of mind, takes a certain pain away, you know, to be able to help you deal with all those kind of, because it can be very, very, I'm talking about this in free like that. Like, as though it's not.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I get that.
And in situations like that, when you knock on God's door, He has a way of helping you deal with all kinds of things. Gives you a certain perspective about all kinds of things around this situation.
That's very true. So the phone lines are open now. I did say that I'll be opening the lines quite early today so that all of you can call us and then share your views, give us your thoughts on this. So the line is open. Is 0555-657278. I repeat, 0555-657278. This is coming from Ajua in Adenta. Ajua says, I love the discussion. Ghana is really blessed with Mr. Isaac Newman Arthur, very eloquent on his job. Bravo. Clinical psychologist. Being invited from one TV station to another. Keep it up. I heard him say today that he's a carpenter too. Wow. New are you a carpenter too?
I do some carpentry.
Hey.
So when I came here, I've been looking around to see what I can pick from there.
We'll charge you.
I think everybody is multi-talented.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even use anything they have.
Okay. So the phone lines are open, and I urge you all to start calling. Keep sending us your messages as well. But Doc, there's one part of this that I want to find out. So how is the child impacted?
Everything about the child is gone. You see, every child would want to find out who are my parents. What especially biological. They want to find out, and when they want to find out, they want to get answers to why did he abandon me. That question, if it's not settled in any child's life, they will grow up.
Doc, I'll hold you on quickly. I told you today we have a lot of people going to join us. So, good evening, caller. Your name and where you are calling from?
Good evening, Mr. Host. My name is Dominic, calling from Kumasi.
Okay, please let's hear you.
All right. I'm really, really enjoying your program, and thanks to the doctor for his advice. You see, this issue of paternity fraud is becoming unbecoming in this country. Sometimes the guys, we always blame the ladies for not conceiving. But at the long run, when time is being spent, as in both parties having time to check, you realize that most of these issues are coming from the men. And the ladies will, because of society pressure, they will go in for men to be impregnated.
Yeah.
There are some men who are not taking precautions. They think that, sometimes they think that when they are not producing, it will be paid. Sometimes they say that I have the count, but then the woman is not able to conceive. A whole lot comes into place. You may be having the sperms all right, but the quality and the morphology rate will also determine.
Okay.
I remember some, not knowing, they were working on, how do you call it, semen analysis. They did semen analysis, realized that the man has a low count.
Okay.
They were working on the low count with advice from a doctor. But still, although the man was taking the drugs, the counts were improved, but still the lady was not conceived. So the next specialist who saw that all what the man is going through is not about the count. The man was suffering from what they said is called the varicocele, which was causing the man not to be able to pregnate the wife. So the point is, if the wife is not, the woman will go back and because the man says to produce not.
Daniel, we seem to be having some challenge with your line. I'll be grateful if you can call back again, because we can't seem to get the last bit of what you're saying. And so this is coming from Frank in Takoradi. Frank says, please, what can we do to be sure the children are ours? It's just the DNA. Is that not it?
Yeah, DNA test.
Just the DNA test. That's the only way you can find. So when you begin to get suspicious, call for a DNA test, I guess. That's what the doctor is, advising all of us. And everybody else says we should do. We're talking about the impact
about
the child.
So that is so the first is that the child would always want to find out who is my dad, who gave birth to me, and why did he abandon me. If that is not solved, the child, grows up with a certain mindset that may be dysfunctional. They may even continue that later on and becomes irresponsible because they didn't have that kind of connection. The next is that depending on how the child was raised by that man, the impact may be different.
Okay.
If that man was loving, caring, did everything, they may not even think about the fact that there's a father somewhere, because they may assume that this is my father,
yeah.
and that is it.
And that's it, yeah.
Right? So depending on that, but if that relationship goes bad, then it means that all the training of that child, the care of that child, the father figure in that child to guide that child, to be able to protect that child, it would all not be there.
Well,
right? And especially if it also ends up in divorce,
yeah,
then everything becomes, so the child is trapped in there, and that's it.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go on my very next break. Thanks for Casa Preco. This show is brought to you. We'll be back shortly to continue. Please stay tuned. As it's still eTVGhana, we are in the men's lounge and we are discussing paternity fraud. And I'm here with Dr. Newman Arthur. He's telling us quite a number of things. So, Doc, we've dealt with the impact on the child. But I want us to go back to the father, not necessarily the biological father. So, how exactly should that person deal with the pain that comes with finding out that this child isn't your child?
Yeah, so for any kind of traumatic event, the person will need some kind of professional help, right? They will need some kind of therapy that would help, would evaluate their situation, find out the impact on them. Then now you can suggest specific things that can be done for that particular person to be able to deal with the pain, right? So I want to say this because there are a lot of us who do not know that most of the things we go through, it is a health issue. And because of that, we need some kind of professional help.
Yeah.
We make it a personal issue, right? And because of that, there are people who are suffering unnecessarily, right? So different fathers may have different situations, right? And those situations may require different responses. So that is what I would tell anybody who is listening, that what you're going through is not a personal issue, it's a health issue.
Yeah.
Because it's in the domain of mental health.
Yeah.
Your thinking, feeling, and behavior. Emotional pain is on the level of your feeling. And it's going to affect your behavior. You may not even, you may be angry or unnecessarily irritable, you will not be able to sleep and all that. So you need some kind of professional help. And when those people see a professional like a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a counselor, they have all kinds of therapies they may take them through, like, to help them deal with the specific situation. Then the second thing is that all the things that we may do with them is meant to help them think well, so that they can feel well, so that they can behave well. Because your thinking affects the way you feel, and the way you feel affects the way you behave.
Yeah.
So for example, if a father says that, okay, this is what happened some time back, but it is all good. This child has turned out well. I love this child anyway, right? Whatever happened, it's for some good.
Yeah.
Maybe if this child had grown up somewhere else, wouldn't have had this opportunity. So that's it. You see, that kind of positive way of thinking would affect how they feel about it. But if another father says that, look at what I went through. You are a bad woman. You did this and that to me. Look at what this child is. That way of thinking may also affect that father.
Okay,
so
Doc,
you may have to look at the person's unique situations and be able to help them. But the primary thing is to help them think in a certain way so that they can all the emotional responses.
Let me take this quick one and then we can get back. Good evening, caller. Your name and then where you're calling from?
My name is George. I'm calling from East Legon.
Hi, George. Please let's hear you.
Hello.
Please let's hear you, George.
Good. This program is very, very interesting, and I must admit that what I'm about to say is very, very sensitive.
Go ahead, George, but please.
I was married to a lady until yesterday. I was married to a lady for 18 years.
Okay.
We've lived together and both decided to relocate to the U.S. My wife and my daughter got to the U.S. A daughter of 13 years got to the U.S. The lady just calls me to tell me she's going to meet a guy she dated whilst I was away. And it's confirmed that the daughter for 13 years, the girl that I've fathered for 13 years, happens not to be my biological daughter. All efforts just to get to talk to the little girl has proved futile. And as we speak, since last November to date, I don't even know where.
Wow, this is George. I think it would be fair to probably place a call again and speak with you once more. The phone line, unfortunately, is disappointing us today. I don't know why, but I'm sure the technical guys are doing something at the back to bring you back. So, George, I'm sure you can call us back or they'll call you. I mean, whichever way, please let's speak again. We'd really love to hear this story. Doc,
that is when you say paternity fraud. This one is fraud.
This one is a fraud. No, but
this one is fraud.
Yeah.
So for every story, you need to be able to evaluate every story differently.
Yeah.
So that you can take the right steps.
Well, I have a question coming from, well, please add your name next time, but I'll still help you out. So please, how can we handle instances where babies are being exchanged by some nurses in the hospital during the process of delivery without the knowledge of the mother? The woman never cheated on the man. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's difficult. The only thing you can hold on to is the fact that you trust her for her word. Right?
Yeah.
And if there are any issues, you may have to go back to the hospital to place a certain, demand on them to find out what exactly happened around that time. But it will be very, very difficult to. It's the word of the woman.
Yeah.
But you may have to go back to the hospital and find out.
Yeah.
And some people go back and we get to know
they're
that
able
this
to
is
uncover
what
what
happened.
happened.
Yes.
Okay. So this is also coming from Frank Ado from Adabraka Official Town Presby Church. Good evening, Anaya. The topic is very insightful and the resource person is very good. His submissions are on point. All right. So Frank says the carpenter is doing well. Look, we only have a minute to wrap up. Your last words.
I think that marriage is challenging. Everybody who wants to go into marriage should be ready. And they should be sure about who they are getting involved with.
Yeah.
In this time, people are very casual with their relationship. They can sleep with anybody they want, anywhere. Yeah. And those things places a certain responsibility on you. Anytime you're sleeping with someone, know that something can come out of it.
Yeah.
It may be you or may not be you. But when you put yourself in that situation, then you are opening yourself up to all kinds of manipulations around that. Right? And so when human relationships become very dysfunctional and there's no commitment and very responsible, these things are bound to happen. Okay. That's why I think it's really increasing.
Yeah.
Right? Then also I would say that regardless of your situation, we always have to look at the positive aspect of everything. Then also if in every situation we just have to depend on God.
All right, so in every situation, we just have to depend on God. I'm sure the evening has been very exciting, and we are very happy to have brought you this topic. Perhaps we might want to do this topic again, but all we want to say is thank you very much for being part of this evening. Thanks to Kasapreko for bringing us, helping us with this show. We are grateful to be your partners. And then, George, we still want to hear your story, and so we'll call you and we'll speak to you on that. Thank you very much for being part of this evening. Join us next week for another exciting episode of the Men's Lounge.
Me cut down on me dream responsibility. See me now, so Maswa obi do bana kuma ni crazy me three so me mo be around betiti and temu de be de me so do you oh I never them jealous me yeah. Cause she love me alone and you don't want no two I see yeah. Me so me pe Sarah only you I dey see yeah. Me no see no other girl, all them one way I rushing on me DM. Ba 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 bam bam bang bang. Also brought chef on sape o many. Into the eye. Also brought chef on sape o many. Also brought chef on sape o many. You and yeah she me mama. Say me who and yeah she me mama. Say me who and yeah she cry cry. I wanna make you know, say you be special or that you know.